Hello. I think a lot of us right now may be feeling exhausted from the amount of emotional activation and excavation that we've had to do over the last several weeks, maybe even the last several months. And as Mars and Venus both move into more feminine receptive signs, I think it's asking us to really slow down. On May 19th, Venus moves into Cancer, Mars moves into Taurus. And both of these signs are about comfort, they're about receptivity because they are feminine, and they both like to move slow in different ways, right? And there is this beautiful sextile, beautiful, easy conversation happening between the two that is creating an undercurrent of integration in a lot of ways. In order for our bodies to integrate what we have gone through, we need to slow down. And we need to learn to attune to the principles of receiving and support that is always around us. Mars is a very hot masculine planet specifically, right? So he is the warrior. He is all about independence and strife and cutting. And when he is placed in the sign of Venus, he does not really feel comfortable in this pleasure-oriented, comfort-seeking, harmony, beauty, art-oriented sign. And yet, he's there. And he must learn to attune. It is part of his journey. Adding to this, the ruler of Taurus, Venus, is also in Cancer, and another very receptive sign. So it's bringing even more receptivity. And as this shift happens, the ruler of Cancer, where Venus moves, is also in Cancer. So once again, we're seeing, especially the first few days of this, is going to feel very emotional, but not in an explosive way. There's an attunement to softness, to ease. I often think about ease in our lives. In the New Moon in Taurus video, I talked about this, about Wu Wei, right? Effortless action, moving with surrender, moving with peace, moving with slowness. This is Taurus energy, right? Fixed earth. And Mars wants to run. He just came from Aries, where he was at home and he was able to maybe get a lot of things accomplished. Maybe, though, a lot of the things that were accomplished were outside of what he actually values. And that's what Mars and Taurus reminds us of. He's asking us to say, what have we actually been doing? Is this in alignment with our values? I just did a video that I'm going to be releasing soon about boundaries and relationships. And I talked about it in a previous video and a lot of people were interested. So I did do it. And in it, I talked a lot about the unconscious roles that we play in relationships and how a lot of us want a lot of things in life, in relationships, in our work, right? We want money, we want love, we want support, but we are unconsciously stopping ourselves from receiving those things because it doesn't feel safe to our nervous system. Because we have always felt like we had to prove our worth. And maybe as a child you did. Maybe this was a survival pattern that you had to have in order to survive. And yet the nervous system doesn't just outgrow this. We have to be the ones who create the causes and conditions in which change can occur in the nervous system. So a lot of us are running on these outdated patterns of finding our worth and value in patterns that no longer serve us. And we're simultaneously frustrated at why we are not getting the things that we desire. But we do not see how we are standing in our own way because we have not learned to receive. There's something that I study called Feldenkrais. You may have heard of it. And it is, how funny. Sometimes I like to just shuffle my tarot cards. I got the Hierophant, and the reason why it's funny to me is because this is a Taurus card. And this is really about structures and philosophy and learning. And I was talking about Feldenkrais. So Feldenkrais is by Moshe Feldenkrais, and it's really about having awareness with movement. But he really focused on, way before these things were popular, decades ago, about nervous system and ease and pleasure. And so sometimes what I like to do is go through books and just open a page and see what comes up. And this is what came up for today. And so I want to share it with you because it's very similar to what I wanted to talk about when it came to this video. And of course, his work is really in the physical body, but attuning that to the nervous system and all those things in integration. So he talks about muscular tension, but it's all related. Resistance is sensed together with muscular tension even when the act involves such a little change in the body space as does simply thinking. Normally, we try to remedy the situation of resistance by a further effort of will. Whenever will effort is necessary, there is unrecognized cross-motivation, and this is an extremely wasteful method of obtaining results. Only immature people need will effort to act. The mature person clears up all the irrelevant motivations and uses interest, necessity, and skill unhindered by unrecognized emotional urges. Now, his idea of mature and immatures needs more nuance there, as he talks about in his other books, but this is really showing us a lot of his work is centered around the fact that we use way too much effort to move the body than necessary, and that these are things that we've learned over time. And so we can really relate this to our entire life, and we can really relate this to not having the skill of reception. When I say things like, let it be easy, it's about allowing what is there to just be there. Because when we slow down to that, and when we attune to that, we realize how much we are supported in the present moment. And when we realize how much we are supported in the present moment, the desire to use will and force soften. Many of us are scared of that softening. And we must remind the body again and again that it's safe. Your circumstances right now, regardless of where you are at, it would be much easier on your system to just be in these spaces. But most of our lives, we move from these spaces of will that create a lot of force that creates the emotional exhaustion. So we are concerned with what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how much we're getting done, but really the exhaustion is not just coming from those external circumstances and how you have to show up, but your resistance and the amount of emotional energy that it takes to consistently resist everything. If there is one thing that you can practice when these two planets are in these signs, which Venus stays for about 4 weeks, so I think it's June 13th, and Mars stays about 6 weeks, so it's a little bit further, maybe end of June. When these are present, they are inviting us to receive. One of the ways that I like to do this when I'm working with clients is receiving the sun. Sitting in the sun and just allowing yourself to receive the rays of the sun. A lot of us jump immediately to receiving love and receiving money, and that is a lot for your system that doesn't feel safe receiving. a lot of this work has to be very modulated. Once again, the feminine is slow. She can be chaotic, yes, but she's also open to what is coming. When I am in a situation where I'm feeling resistance, I try my best to not just look at what I need to do, but what the resistance is showing. So for example, I wanted to make this video and it was kind of last minute. And I was like, well, I really want to make this video. And then the resistance showed up. And when I sat with the resistance was, well, you got to get ready. You got to put on makeup. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to make notes. And I realized how much I was imposing these guidelines onto creating this video that didn't really need to be there. And so I asked myself, if I remove these guidelines, do I still want to show up? And the answer was, hell yeah. So I did. When there is resistance, instead of trying to push through, let the resistance be there. And when I do this work with my clients and in group programs, it looks like doing this on the sensation level, because our body and our nervous system speak in sensation rather than feeling emotions, but pure raw physical data. What does sensation feel like in your body? Can you sit with it without running to resolve it? This is also what builds capacity in our system. The ability to be able to hold more of life. So when we talk about reception, it requires being able to hold energy. And holding energy more and more is increased capacity in the nervous system. This is the intertwining of physiology and energy. They're not separate at all, right? I mean, the nervous system is electrochemical, but regardless, I mean, we're all energy. Everything is energy. So when we work on whether we use the language of nervous system or energy or whatever, it is really working on the same thing. So a lot of the things that we say we want, we do not have the capacity to hold. And so it doesn't make sense to just start imagining, to visualize having the most perfect relationship or $10 million. Your nervous system can't hold it anyways. Your body can't hold that level of energy yet. I work with, you're probably a very sensitive person if you're watching this. You have maybe a sensitive nervous system. Maybe you don't even know that you do, right? But I tend to attract people like that because same. And sensitive people have been conditioned in ways that we do not consciously understand to step outside of our sensitivity and the wisdom of it. We're always trying to run away from the sensitivity. But the sensitivity is what essentially and eventually makes you so powerful. But you need to train it. You need to train the sensitivity. You need to be able to hold your sensitivity. Cancer and Taurus have a lot in common. One of the things that they have in common is comfort, right? They both like to be comforted, whether that's physically or emotionally, maybe both. I have a Venus in Cancer and I love food. I just love food. I work out so I can eat more. That's what I always say. Obviously I work out for other reasons too, but that's a huge reason. And I've always used food as a way of emotional caretaking, right? Obviously some survival patterns to look at there, but also just it is what it is, right? It's like at some point we just have to allow ourselves to not always try to fix ourselves, Oh, I talk about that forever because I was a fixer of myself. These transits that are happening, specifically Mars in Taurus, are not going to feel easy the whole ride. Nothing is, right? We're always in this changing cycle. We're always in this changing rhythm. around May 25th, 26th, 27th, we're going to have Mars square Pluto, right? And this is a very uh, intense configuration. We've got the warrior and the warrior of the underworld essentially coming together in a tense aspect. Once again, it's not about what is happening out in the world or what this transit represents, but how you relate to it. Whatever is transforming with Mars square Pluto, can we allow the resistance to be there and move into a state of receptivity around what is happening? Maybe this is a part of the process. Maybe this is a necessary step toward moving through exactly what you want. It's so interesting because a lot of work out there in the world that people create, even I noticed this coming up in myself with creative rewilding, and it's, you know, in creative rewilding, we're working on visibility and being seen and publishing things. And so of course there's some resistance that comes up when it comes to those things. This is the edge, right? And so I obviously hold the container of visibility and publishing and showing up and doing all these things, and also recognizing that putting timelines on things is really reductive. And I want to say something when I say reductive, because we often think about Scorpio being the really depth-oriented sign, but Taurus is also very deep. And this is something I did not realize when I was younger. Taurus brings depth and simplicity. Scorpio brings depth and complexity. So we often think depth and complexity are the same thing, but they're not. Taurus reminds us to simplify and to find depth in fewer things. We have a tendency to make things complicated because most of us live up here in the mind. And the mind is living in duality, and there is no conclusion in the mind space, especially because it lives in duality. So it will continue to find this way and this way and this thing and this thing, and, you know, and we confuse that with depth. Depth does not have to be hard. It does not have to be suffered for. Depth can feel easy. We can sink into a chair, right? We can sink deeper and deeper into meditation, and it can feel good. It can feel pleasurable. You know, it's so interesting. Mars and Taurus is going through my 10th, and you know, you think, oh, Mars going through your 10th, you're going to visibility and all these things that you're going to be doing and the career, and that's where your will's going. And I'm going on a 2-week meditation retreat. I'm like, see ya. But when you look closer, the ruler of Taurus is Venus, and it's in Cancer, which is my 12th house. So it makes a lot more sense. And while I'm there, Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter will be in my 12th house. So I got the sun reversed. This is interesting because this is what came up as the obstacle in the new moon video. And now I wasn't thinking about the obstacle, but it came up reversed. So once again, there's something here about not believing that you are worthy of life being easy. You are not worthy of life being pleasurable. You are not worthy of receiving. And when you look around in your life, you will see all of the places that you have made it harder than it needs to be. We hear this cliche, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And cliches are cliches for a reason. It's not that you don't have real reasons to have pain, right? As somebody who comes from a background of autoimmune diseases and chronic pain, this was always something to hold of myself, is like, the reality is I'm in pain, and that's a very real thing. And also, the resistance to the pain is creating a lot of problems. It is what is actually causing me to be in a state of suffering. over a year ago, I went to a pelvic floor therapist, and she was a PT, she was a doctor of physical therapy, and she did manual work, inner manual work that, and she released. I told her I'm very sensitive. Please don't be too aggressive, and she was very aggressive, and she released something on the left side, and it's been over a year, and it still like flares up from time to time. The other day, it was hurting for like 2 days, and I was like, well, I'm too busy, and then I sat down in meditation and I was like, okay, like this has got to stop, like I gotta stop running from this essentially. And so when I sat with it, and this is a skill that I've cultivated, right? It's not something that you may feel immediately because I've worked on this very long time, but faster and faster you're start noticing that you don't even have to consciously work as hard to sit with the resistance. Because what I noticed, as soon as I really sat in meditation and allowed that pain to really be there and to experience it fully, and I have some techniques that I use based on if the pain is really severe, and almost immediately, within seconds, there was such a release. Not because I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit with this so it goes away, but because I immediately felt so much attunement and empathy for this part of me. While I was running around trying to do all the things in my life and I need to get this done, this part of me was saying, hey, I'm really suffering. I'm in pain right now. I was like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time. I got to do this. I got to do that. We just get so caught up in the world. And as soon as I sat with it, it was like, oh, this just needed me to know it was in pain. And it's so interesting, like when I sat with it told me some things. There were messages that arose. They don't always arise, but there were messages that arose of what was creating this sort of pain there. And my job is to listen. So there is something about reception. There is something about believing you're not good enough, that you can't have this. And all I really want you to hold is that life will happen. You will be in negative circumstances. You will be in circumstances that you don't want to be in. That is life. We do not control those things. You can control what your unconscious motivations are that are creating resistance. And when you seek to understand and connect with those motivations, rather than trying to always push yourself forward, you'll not only find, like the tortoise and the hare, you will get further and it will be much more sustainable, but you will also find that your connection and experience in the process becomes so much richer. And what is life if we do not enjoy the process? You're never going to get anywhere. The only place you're headed is death. I'm so sorry to tell you that. And we're just always trying to get to the next step, always trying to get to this next thing. And it's ruining our process, the experience of the process. There are times for slowing down. The first couple of weeks, especially of June, it's like perfect timing for me to be in a meditation retreat, I'll tell you that. But it really is a slowing down, because as life does, it works in cycles and things will start speeding up again. What are the unconscious motivations that are keeping you in resistance to receiving? What values are you discovering you're not really living? They're staying here. This is my values. And what is one or two things you can do in the next week to shorten that gap between what you know you value and how you actually live? Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time.